For this video, I'll be doing something a bit different. I'll be going over some fan designs I had for what I imagined sort of void demon manifestations of the Requiem concepts might look like. I made these for a light novel I wrote, and with the exception of one, came up with their designs before Whispers in the Wall was revealed, so their visuals are more based on the man in the wall and not the design principles of the Murmur enemies. So less sandstone and metal and more alabaster or plaster statues. I'll just do the first four for this video so it doesn't drag on too long in case people are really not interested, and I'll go with the order the protagonist, the scholar, encounters them in my nerdy little story, and hopefully bridge the gap between my ability and what I was hoping to actually represent or execute with their designs. So without further ado, let's start with Vome, or Order. I figure Order should be the simplest, or most coherent design, as it's a sort of last vestige of the border between dust and void, a marker of what the void is trying to break down, barely strung together and fragmented. I was going for a sort of broken, androgynous statue-esque appearance, but also a statue that wasn't fully finished, like it was almost an afterthought, or made hastily as an icon that was doomed to be broken. In that vein, I was trying to make it look like it was almost being made from cast-offs, like solidified smoke or as if it rose from the mud left by waves, almost like it was formed layer by layer from the detritus that washes across the border between dust and void, a living stalactite of reality coalescing between dimensions. Now, whenever I come up with creature designs like this, I can't help but imagine what it would be like fully realized in a game, even if it probably wouldn't work too well in the game I imagine it for. I think Vome would be mostly melee, rushing in almost like a slinky with pieces trailing after it as it lurches into position. Each individual part would be destroyable and affect some aspect of its abilities, like destroying its head drives it into a blind frenzy, but prevents further weak point multipliers, or destroying its blade-wielding hand reduces it to less effective attacks, but also makes it harder to hit the remaining pieces. In that regard, it would need to take significantly less damage from AoE attacks, though I doubt that would really help much in Warframe's meta. I think something along the lines of Monsoon from Metal Gear Rising, but a bit less chaotic, would be the closest comparison to how fighting it would work. Next is Jahu, or Form. Jahu was the first one I came up with, and personally I think it's the best of the bunch. I always saw something almost archaic in the void, like it's so old and ancient it supersedes more advanced forms. So I figured the best representation of form or creation would be the basest tool for that purpose, hands. I wasn't even considering the whole missing finger angle at the time, and it just turned out to be a pretty happy coincidence that the Murmur are so angled around hands and fingers. I went with a big tangle of arms, flexing and pulling randomly at each other, a chaotic lack of direction. But then they would sync for deliberate movements in a wave effect, like a anemone in the ocean. Lots of ocean inspirations for these designs in general, for obvious reasons. Then I gave it some legs to move because I thought more hands might be a bit overkill, and also because I was going for a sort of Atlas or Sisyphus look, like these poor legs have to bear a weight far greater than they're able, the burden of reality and creation weighing down upon them. Going with the archaic angle, I thought it would be neat if most of its visuals were similar to modeling clay, vomiting up brackish gray sludge and hunks of muck that fall away into whatever it's making. In that regard, I imagine its gameplay would be a lot less direct, appearing far away and then spawning other enemy units that would seek you out. Maybe a kick, weak ranged attack, or headbutt of some sort if a player got close, but its combat purpose would be more of a support unit than a direct threat, making players move out of position to seek and destroy the source. It would have to have a big amount of damage resistance due to being so slow, but if you shot into its mouth as it tried spitting things out, either for spawning or as one of its self-defense attacks, it would take a massive damage multiplier. When it dies, I imagine it unfurling almost like a blooming flower before dissolving into the same clay-like sludge it creates. Next is Reese, or Light. I think the visuals here are pretty obvious, maybe a bit too obvious. I was going for what basically amounts to a giant mobile cathedral pane or lotus pod pattern at first. I wound up going for the sort of visuals that you see on Duviri, since I felt that was a pretty good in-game reference. I also wanted it to be a head to a smaller creature, so went with a charred, suspiciously small body in the center. Ideally, it would look more fleshy or natural towards the base or neck, and then get more rough or calcified towards the top of the cathedral pane, like it slowly grew out from the body over time. I wanted the idea to almost be like a mockery from the void, since the Tenno are so often referred to with light or bright connotations. Thus, the void basically put a charred Tenno corpse in the middle, almost as if to remind the Tenno that light can be used to burn and will eventually consume them from inside. But the hands also guard and protect the smaller body, like the void is covetous and possessive of the Tenno, and accidentally played its confused emotions out a bit with the design. The spider-like appearance was, admittedly, just because I thought it was kind of creepy. Overall, a pretty blunt design, probably on the poorer end of the bunch in my opinion. In gameplay, it would skitter around, working as a ranged unit. I imagine each aperture would project a single solid beam of light in a different off-kilter angle at inconsistent intervals, like some sort of weird disco panel, doing pure damage of one type with guaranteed proc chance. The angles and elements of the light beams would alternate while the creature moved around and shifted its head with its hands, like tuning a radar dish. Shooting the clutched body in the middle would be its weak spot, but on taking damage, the whole beast would wrap its arms around the body and scramble away, so a good way to flush it out of position quickly if you didn't have time to focus on it. I think a key aspect of Reese would also be the sound, almost like a twin to Gera, with glass shattering or glass resonant tones as it moves and attacks. That horrible grindy sound of glass underfoot would be perfect for its footsteps. Last for this video is Xata, or Truth. Truth was kind of a strange mix of ideas, to be honest. First, I wanted it to be something that appeared relatively calm or peaceful at first glance, but becomes something horrible the longer you look at it. Additionally, I wanted it to have something to do with dreams, as if the Void's idea of truth or reality is the same thing as dreams, drawing on the ideas of conceptual embodiment and multiple timelines being real in the Void. So an idea of a sleeping or dreaming head with its eyes closed that becomes more horrifying when it wakes up just kind of fell into place. Its wings are actually inspired by the way ribbon worms expel their proboscis, once again looking to the ocean for inspiration, and I honestly use the whole ribbon worm stomach angle a lot in my personal work. Ribbon worms are awesome and disgusting in such a great way. I also wanted the back of its head to be sort of fractal or abstract, again with the idea that from the front it looks normal-ish, but its true form becomes more apparent as the facade falls away. I don't think I executed the back part of the head very well, but that was the intent. The crawling fingers thing is a cool trope in general, so I don't know if I was drawing from any one source or just an amalgam of stuff. In hindsight, I think I was probably pulling from Neo Contra subconsciously, since I played that game a lot when I was younger, but I'm not sure. It was probably Neo Contra. In gameplay, Xata would float around on its wings, kind of silently hovering around the arena. I don't really have a good idea for how it would attack, or if it should be more of a support unit in its initial form, but its weak spot would be above its head, making the player find a way to get height on it and shoot down into its cranium of fire. After taking enough damage, the eyes would open and huge swaths of the ribbon worm mess would spill out like spaghetti. It would then become a lot more aggressive and chase players down, whipping its tendrils around and doing huge amounts of electric and toxic damage if it managed to connect. In another game, I imagine it would also have a grab attack of some sort, but I don't think those tend to work well in Warframe's fast-paced gameplay most of the time. And those are the first 4. I'll do the last 5, but really just 4, in another video, and maybe other concept videos going forward. If you want to read the light novel I wrote, I'll post that in the description as well, though I get it if reading some mildly Warframe-related fanfiction isn't how you want to spend your time. I also don't do it for my regular lore videos since it's a bit of a flow break, but I'll plug my Patreon and YouTube memberships if you are so inclined. If you join either platform, your name will be in the credits of my videos, and I will also share the whips of what I'm currently working on. I'm actively looking for feedback on how to improve offerings through those platforms as well, so feel free to give feedback there. But thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a wonderful day.